So here's the thing about the Galactic Council. It's supposed to be this grand assembly of the most advanced civilizations in the known universe, right? Species that have mastered faster-than-light travel, quantum computing, and the ability to terraform entire planets. These are beings who can calculate the trajectory of a comet 17 galaxies away while simultaneously debating the philosophical implications of artificial consciousness. And yet, somehow, humanity broke them in under 3 months. My name is Commander Vex of the Thorian Empire, and I have 4 arms, which is normally enough to handle any crisis. Spoiler alert! It was not enough for this one. The emergency session was called on a Tuesday, which should tell you everything about how seriously we take human-related problems. Tuesday is typically reserved for minor administrative issues, like processing trade disputes or updating our database of planets that probably should not be visited after dark. But there we were, every major species in the council chamber, staring at a holographic display that simply read, "The Human Problem." Ambassador Jake Morrison sat in the human delegation seat, looking remarkably comfortable for someone whose entire species was under review. He was drinking something called coffee from a paper cup, which our environmental sensors had flagged as both a stimulant and a potential biohazard. His species had been in the galactic community for exactly 94 standard days, and he had already somehow filed more incident reports than the Krellian Empire had in the past century. The Krellians started 3 separate wars in that time frame, just for context. Commander Vex, High Counselor Thurn began, his crystalline form refracting light in what I had learned to recognize as deep concern. You have been studying human behavior for the integration period. Please explain to this council why humans continue to make decisions based on, quote, feelings, end quote. I activated my presentation display with 2 of my hands while using the other 2 to stress grip my data tablet. Honored council members, I have compiled extensive research on human decision-making processes, and I have concluded that humans are, in technical terms, completely insane. Jake raised his hand. I feel like that's a bit harsh. You jumped out of a moving spacecraft last week to retrieve a floating piece of fabric because, and I quote, "It was your lucky shirt," I said flatly. It was my lucky shirt, Jake protested. I wore it when Earth signed the Galactic Treaty. That's sentimental value. You nearly died in the vacuum of space, I continued. But I didn't, and I got the shirt back. So technically I made the right call. 3 council members' translation devices made sounds that I am fairly certain were meant to represent screaming. This is precisely the issue, Counselor Mora of the Sentient Collective interjected. Her species communicated through shared consciousness, which made individual emotional responses somewhat alien to them. Humans repeatedly risk their existence for concepts that provide no tactical, strategic, or survival advantage. Our analysis indicates that humans call this love. The word hung in the air like a very confused bat. The translation is approximate, Mora continued. Our linguists believe it refers to an emotional attachment that supersedes logical reasoning, self-preservation, and in some cases, the basic laws of physics. That's actually pretty accurate, Jake said cheerfully. Love makes people do crazy things. It's kind of our whole deal. Your whole deal is insanity? Thurn asked. Our whole deal is loving people so much that we do insane things for them, Jake clarified. There's a difference. I do not perceive one, I muttered, pulling up my first case study. Which brings me to the purpose of this presentation. The Council has requested evidence of human love-based decision-making to determine if humanity is, in fact, too unstable for continued membership in the galactic community. Jake stopped mid-sip of his coffee. Wait, are we getting kicked out of space? That depends entirely on whether you can explain yourselves, Thurn said gravely. No pressure though, I added, with what I had learned humans called sarcasm. Jake set down his coffee cup with the careful precision of someone who had just realized he might need to save his entire species before lunch. Okay then. Hit me with your best shot, Commander. Famous last words, really. Let us begin with what humans call weddings, I announced, pulling up a holographic display that showed a human female in an elaborate white garment that appeared to cost more than a small spacecraft. The council leaned forward with interest. Several species had bonding ceremonies, so this seemed like relatively safe territory. Human weddings are ceremonial events where 2 individuals formally announce their intention to remain bonded for the duration of their natural lives, I explained. This seems reasonable on the surface. It does, Counselor Mora agreed cautiously. However, humans spend an average of 30,000 credits on a single-day ceremony. For context, that is enough currency to purchase a Class B interstellar vessel. Silence filled the chamber. They could buy a spaceship, Thurn said slowly. Yes, but they buy one day instead. Correct. Why? I gestured to Jake, who had been trying very hard to look innocent. Ambassador Morrison, would you care to explain? Jake stood up, radiating the confidence of someone who absolutely did not have a good explanation prepared. Well, you see, a wedding is about celebrating love and commitment with all the people you care about. It's a once-in-a-lifetime event, unless you divorce, I noted. Which humans do approximately 43% of the time, according to Earth statistics. Okay. Yes, but that's not the point, Jake said quickly. The point is that the wedding day is special. It's about making memories. You could make memories on a spaceship, Counselor Thurn pointed out. In space. Which is objectively more interesting than a single room with decorative plant life. He's got you there, I added helpfully. Jake rubbed his face with both hands. Look, I can't explain why weddings cost what they cost. Nobody can. But people want their wedding day to be perfect because they love the person they're marrying. And they want everyone to witness that love in the most beautiful way possible. I pulled up my next slide. Which brings me to Exhibit A1, the case of Melissa Torres. An image appeared of a human female with dark hair, standing in what appeared to be a medical facility, arguing with a holographic doctor. Miss Torres was scheduled for a critical surgery to repair a genetic heart condition, I explained. The procedure had a 98% success rate and would significantly extend her lifespan. However, the surgery date conflicted with her best friend's wedding, which was taking place on a beach on the opposite side of Earth's largest ocean. She rescheduled the surgery? Mora asked. Worse. She postponed it for 6 months because that was the next available slot with her specialist. She then spent 7,000 credits traveling to the wedding, where she served as something called a maid of honor. What tactical importance does a maid of honor serve? Thurn inquired. Jake winced. It's a ceremonial position. The maid of honor supports the bride emotionally and helps organize the wedding activities. So no tactical importance whatsoever, I confirmed. Correct, but huge emotional importance, Jake countered. Melissa loved her best friend. Being there for one of the most important days of her friend Jess' life mattered more than her own medical needs. That is objectively suicidal, Counselor Mora stated. That is objectively love, Jake replied. I brought up another image, Melissa standing next to her friend, both crying, holding hands. The wedding proceeded without incident. Miss Torres survived the 6-month delay and successfully underwent her surgery. When interviewed afterward, she stated she would make the same decision again without hesitation. But why? A council member from the Zorthian sector asked, genuinely baffled. The logical choice was obvious. Because logic doesn't account for the fact that some moments only happen once, Jake said quietly. Her best friend got married one time. Melissa could get surgery later, but she couldn't get that day back. She chose love over logic, and she got to witness one of the happiest moments of someone she cared about. And if she had died during the delay? Thurn challenged. Then she would have died knowing she was there for her friend when it mattered, Jake said simply. The council sat in stunned silence. I watched as approximately 17 different species tried to process information that did not compute in any of their cultural frameworks. My data tablet started smoking slightly. I switched to a backup device. I have 63 more wedding-related incidents in my files, I said carefully, including one where a human male fought a bear to retrieve a wedding ring, and another where a human female learned to pilot a helicopter in 72 hours to surprise her partner with an aerial proposal. What is a helicopter? Someone asked. An atmospheric vehicle that should not be piloted by amateurs, I replied. And yet, Jake shrugged helplessly. People do crazy things for love, especially when they're getting married. It's like love cranked up to maximum volume. Your species has a volume control for emotions? Mora asked hopefully. No, that's a metaphor. We actually have no control whatsoever. That is what concerns us, Thurn said gravely. I saved my files and prepared the next presentation. Unfortunately, weddings are just the beginning. The situation becomes significantly worse from here. Jake closed his eyes. Oh no. You're going to tell them about Bex, aren't you? Oh yes, I confirmed. I am absolutely going to tell them about Bex. 3 months ago, the Earth Defense Force reported a stolen military spacecraft. I began, pulling up an image of a sleek fighter vessel. The ship was taken from a secure facility by Captain Rebecca Holland, callsign Bex, a decorated officer with 15 years of service and 0 prior disciplinary incidents. The council perked up slightly. Theft of military assets was something they understood. It was logical, strategic, and usually motivated by profit or political gain. Captain Holland stole the spacecraft to mount a rescue mission, I continued. Rescue from what hostile force? Councillor Thurn asked. No hostile force. She traveled to the Kepler mining colony to extract her ex-boyfriend, who was working there voluntarily under a legal contract. The council's interest transformed into confusion so profound I could almost taste it. I'm sorry, Morris said slowly. Her ex-boyfriend, correct? Former romantic partner. They had terminated their relationship 8 months prior. So she rescued someone who did not require rescuing. From a situation that was not dangerous, despite no longer being in a relationship with them, Thurn summarized. And she used military property to do this. Yes. Why? I gestured to Jake again, who looked like he wanted to crawl under his chair and hide. Ambassador Morrison, you are acquainted with Captain Holland. Please explain. Jake stood reluctantly. Okay, so Bex is kind of intense. She and Marcus, that's the ex-boyfriend, broke up because they wanted different things. He wanted to work in the mining colonies and save money. She wanted to stay in the military and advance her career. They decided to end things amicably. That sounds remarkably logical for humans, Mora observed. Right? That's what we all thought. But then Bex started thinking about Marcus out there in the colonies, and she convinced herself he was miserable and needed to be rescued from his own bad decisions. Was he miserable? Thurn asked. I pulled up interview footage of Marcus Chun, a human male standing in a mining facility, looking extremely confused. Mr. Chun was, by all accounts, quite content. He had friends, a job he enjoyed, and had recently started dating someone new. So the rescue was completely unnecessary, Morris said. Completely, I confirmed. However, Captain Holland did not allow this minor detail to deter her. She hijacked the spacecraft, flew for 3 days across 2 solar systems, landed at the mining colony, and forcibly extracted Mr. Chun while he was eating lunch in the cafeteria. The footage played, Bex in full flight suit, dramatically announcing that she had come to save Marcus, while Marcus held a sandwich and repeatedly said, Bex, what are you doing? I'm fine. I'm literally fine. She kidnapped him, Councillor Thurn said flatly. Technically, yes, Jake admitted. But she thought she was rescuing him. From what? Mora demanded. From making a mistake, Jake said. She loved him, and even though they weren't together anymore, she couldn't stand the thought of him being somewhere that she thought wasn't right for him. So she went full romantic rescue mission. This is romantic? A council member asked, horrified. To Bex it was, Jake said. In her mind, true love means saving someone even when they don't want to be saved. Especially then, actually. I advanced to the next slide. Captain Holland was court-martialed for theft of military property, unauthorized use of a spacecraft, and violation of approximately 17 different regulations. She was dishonorably discharged from the military. Appropriate consequences, Thurn noted with satisfaction. However, I continued, during the court-martial, Mr. Chen testified that while Bex's methods were, quote, completely insane and borderline criminal, end quote, he realized that her actions proved she still loved him. They rekindled their relationship and are now married. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the station's life support systems humming. They got married, Mora repeated slowly. Yes, after she kidnapped him. Correct. And destroyed her own career. Also correct, because she loved him. Apparently that's how it works, I said, my own confusion evident. Jake jumped in. Look, I know how it sounds, but sometimes grand romantic gestures are about proving you care enough to risk everything. Bex showed Marcus that she would sacrifice her career, her freedom, and common sense itself because she couldn't let him go. That meant something to him. It meant she was dangerously unstable, Councillor Thurn said. That too, Jake agreed. But it also meant she loved him more than anything else in the universe. And Marcus realized he felt the same way. So yeah, they got married. They run a small cargo transport business now. They're actually pretty happy. Does Mr. Chun understand the concept of ex-boyfriend? Mora asked carefully. Intellectually, yes, Jake said. Emotionally? Humans are not great with the concept of former loved ones. We tend to carry feelings around forever, even when we shouldn't. I pulled up statistical data. I have documented 47 similar cases of humans attempting rescue missions for former romantic partners in the past Earth year alone. Success rate for the rescues, 32%. Rate of relationship reconciliation following failed rescues, 18%. Rate of humans learning from these experiences and not doing it again, 0%. Zero? Thurn asked. Zero, I confirmed. Humans do not learn from love-related mistakes. They simply make new, more creative mistakes. This is a fundamental flaw in the species, Mora declared. Or a fundamental feature, Jake countered. We love hard, we love stupid, and we love forever. It's not logical, it's not safe. But it's real, and it makes us who we are. I closed that presentation file with all four hands simultaneously, which is the Thorian equivalent of a heavy sigh. Unfortunately, the situation continues to deteriorate. We must now discuss the pet situation. Jake's face went pale. Oh no, not the pets. Especially the pets, I said grimly. This is where human logic completely abandons any pretense of existing, I announced, pulling up an image of a small earth creature with fur, 4 legs, and what appeared to be a permanent expression of mild judgment. This is a cat, I explained. Felis catus. A small carnivorous mammal that humans domesticated approximately 10,000 years ago. The council examined the hologram with interest. It appears to be a standard companion animal, Councillor Thurn observed. Many species keep such creatures for pest control or security purposes. That would be logical, I agreed. However, cats provide neither of these services effectively. They are small, approximately 4 kilograms, possess minimal defensive capabilities, and their hunting instinct is primarily activated by objects that are not actual threats. Played footage of a cat attacking a cucumber. What is the cucumber's tactical advantage? Mora asked, confused. None. The cat is simply afraid of it, I explained. Cats are afraid of many things, including but not limited to loud noises, unfamiliar objects, other cats, and their own reflection. So they are cowardly, Thurn concluded. Extremely. They also damage human furniture, require constant feeding, produce waste that humans must manually dispose of, and show minimal affection or loyalty. Then why do humans keep them? Mora asked, genuinely baffled. Jake stood up again, wearing the expression of someone about to defend the indefensible. Because they're soft and cute, and sometimes they purr. The council stared at him. That's it? Thurn asked. That's it, Jake confirmed. Cats are adorable. We love them. I pulled up the next case file. Dr. Marcus Kim is a theoretical physicist specializing in quantum mechanics. He was offered a position at the Mars Colony Research Facility, which would have advanced his career significantly and increased his salary by 60%. A logical career move, Mora noted. Yes, however, Dr. Kim declined the position because he could not transport his cat, Mr. Whiskers, to Mars. Mr. Whiskers is 17 years old, which is elderly for a cat, and the journey would have been too stressful for him. I displayed an image of Dr. Kim sitting with his cat, who was sleeping and drooling slightly. Dr. Kim chose to sacrifice a major career advancement to remain with an animal that is, by his own admission, quote, kind of a jerk who knocks things off tables and yells at me at 4 a.m, I read from the interview transcript. But he's my jerk, Jake added, reading ahead in the file. And he's been with me through 2 divorces, 3 career changes, and that time I accidentally set my apartment on fire. I'm not abandoning him just because Mars has better research facilities. The cat did not assist with any of those situations, Councillor Thurn pointed out. No, but he was there, Jake said. Sometimes that's enough. The cat loved him by simply existing in his space. That's what pets do. Pets do nothing, I corrected. That is my point. Pets provide emotional support, Jake argued. They make us happy. They give us something to care about beyond ourselves. Is that logical? No. Does it matter? Also no. We love them anyway. I advanced to my next slide with the grim determination of someone approaching the battlefield. This brings me to the Mars Colony pet incident. Jake groaned audibly. In year 2184, the Mars Colony had a strict no-animal policy due to resource limitations and biosecurity concerns, I explained. However, colonists began smuggling animals to the colony in violation of all regulations. How many animals? Mora asked. 47 at last count, including 23 cats, 16 dogs, 4 rabbits, 2 hamsters, 1 parrot, and a creature called a bearded dragon, which is apparently a reptile despite the name suggesting something far more dangerous. The hologram displayed images of colonists hiding animals in cargo containers, disguising pet carriers as scientific equipment, and in one memorable case, training a dog to pretend to be a maintenance robot. The colony director discovered the illegal animals and ordered their immediate removal, I continued. The colonists refused. They staged what humans call a protest, where they ceased work and demanded that the animals be allowed to stay. They halted a Mars colony over pets? Thurn asked, incredulous. They did. The standoff lasted for 6 days. Eventually, Earth's government intervened and ruled that colonists could keep their animals, provided they signed documents accepting full responsibility for their care. The humans won by simply refusing to be logical, Morris said slowly. Correct. Because apparently, humans would rather risk their careers, their living situations, and the structural integrity of a Mars colony than give up animals that provide no tangible benefit beyond, quote, being good boys and girls, end quote. Jake smiled proudly. You're starting to understand. I understand that humanity is insane, I retorted. But you understand why now, Jake said. We love things that can't love us back in the same way. We love things that are inconvenient. We love things that cost too much and require too much effort. Because love isn't supposed to be convenient or logical. It's supposed to be real. I pulled up my final image in this section, a support registry document. Humans have also created a legal classification called emotional support animals. These are animals that provide psychological comfort to humans experiencing mental or emotional distress. That sounds almost reasonable, Counselor Thurn admitted. The animals include dogs, cats, birds, miniature horses, pigs, and in one documented case, an alligator named Wally. An alligator, Mora repeated. A large semi-aquatic reptile with significant bite force and aggressive tendencies, I clarified. And humans find this emotionally supportive? Thurn asked. Apparently Wally is, quote, a very good boy who likes cucumber, end quote, I read from the file. At this point, 3 translation devices sparked and shut down permanently. Their operators sat in stunned silence, trying to process information that fundamentally contradicted every principle of logical thought they had ever known. Jake pulled out his personal communication device. Want to see a picture of my dog, Winston? No, I said firmly. He showed me anyway. The dog appeared to be smiling, tongue hanging out, radiating what humans called joy. He's the best boy, Jake said affectionately. Cost me 300 credits to adopt him from a shelter. Destroyed my couch within a week. I love him more than my spaceship. You have a spaceship? I asked. No, but if I did, I would love Winston more. This is madness, Counselor Thurn declared. This is humanity, Jake replied cheerfully. I closed all my files and looked at the council with all 4 of my eyes. And now you understand why we are here. Humans make illogical decisions based on love in every aspect of their lives. Weddings, romantic relationships, pets. It never stops. They love indiscriminately and illogically. And you expect us to accept this species into our community? Mora challenged. I expect you to try, Jake said seriously. Because love is what makes us human. Take that away, and we're just another logical species making logical decisions. Where's the fun in that? The council looked deeply uncomfortable with this question. Perhaps, Counselor Thurn said carefully, we should hear more about this love concept. Explain how it benefits your species strategically. Jake and I exchanged glances. This should be interesting, I muttered. Counselor Thurn gestured for Jake to approach the central platform, which normally was reserved for heads of state and extremely important diplomatic proceedings. Jake walked up with his coffee cup, which he had somehow refilled during the pet presentation, and stood there looking remarkably unconcerned about potentially dooming his entire species. Ambassador Morrison, Thurn began formally. This council requires a logical explanation for human love-based decision-making. We need to understand how this emotional system provides strategic or survival advantages that justify its clear drawbacks. Jake took a long sip of coffee, which I was beginning to suspect was his version of stalling for time. Okay, here's the thing. Love isn't supposed to provide strategic advantages. It's not a tool or a weapon or a resource management system. Love is what happens when we care about something or someone more than we care about ourselves. That is objectively detrimental to survival, Mora interjected. In the short term maybe, Jake agreed. But in the long term, love is why we survive. It's why we build communities, why we protect each other, why we make sacrifices for the next generation. Logic gets you through the day. Love gets you through a lifetime. I activated my data display, unable to help myself. Counterpoint. The sentient collective has thrived for 16,000 years using pure logic-based decision-making. They have never experienced what humans call love, and they have achieved remarkable technological and social advancement. Yeah, but are they happy? Jake asked. The council turned to look at Counselor Mora, who seemed genuinely confused by the question. Happiness is not a measurable strategic outcome, Mora said carefully. That's exactly my point, Jake said. You've built an amazing civilization, but you did it without joy, without passion, without ever making a stupid decision at 3 a.m. because your heart told you it was right. You've never stood in the rain confessing your feelings to someone. You've never stayed up all night comforting a friend. You've never loved someone so much it actually hurt. Why would we want to experience pain? Mora asked, genuinely baffled. Because the pain means it mattered, Jake said softly. Love hurts sometimes, it's supposed to, but it also makes everything else worth it. Counselor Thurn shifted his crystalline form, which I had learned to recognize as deep thought. The Krellian Empire bases all relationships on contractual agreements with clearly defined terms and dissolution clauses. This prevents emotional complications. It also prevents actual connection, Jake countered. What happens when one of your people needs help but can't offer anything in return? What happens when someone is sick or elderly or just having a terrible day? They would seek assistance through proper governmental channels, Thurn replied. But who holds their hand while they're scared? Jake asked. Who tells them everything will be okay, even when it might not be? Who loves them unconditionally, not because it's contractually obligated, but because they genuinely care? The silence that followed was profound and uncomfortable. A council member from the Vraxian Dominion spoke up for the first time. My species mates for tactical genetic advantage. We analyze compatibility markers and select partners who will produce optimal offspring. This has served us well for millennia. But did you ever choose someone who made you laugh? Jake asked. Someone who made you feel like the universe made sense when they smiled? Someone who you wanted to be around even when it served no tactical purpose whatsoever? The Vraxian council member had no response. Jake turned to address the entire council. Look, I get it. Love is messy and illogical, and sometimes catastrophically stupid. But it's also the reason humans have survived everything the universe has thrown at us. When Earth faced extinction-level disasters, we didn't survive because of logic. We survived because we loved each other enough to fight for one more day together. I pulled up historical records, intending to contradict him with data, but stopped when I actually looked at the information. Human history was filled with examples of people sacrificing themselves for others, communities coming together in crises, and individuals performing extraordinary acts simply because they cared. The Mars colony incident, I said slowly, piecing together a realization. The colonists didn't just keep their pets out of stubbornness. They kept them because after being isolated on another planet for months, those animals made them feel less alone. Exactly, Jake said. The pets weren't practical. They were necessary. There's a difference. Counselor Mora's form flickered with what I was beginning to recognize as uncertainty. The sentient collective does not experience loneliness. We share consciousness. We are never alone. But do you ever choose to be together? Jake asked gently. Or are you just always connected whether you want to be or not? Mora had no answer. My grandparents got married 64 years ago, Jake continued, his voice taking on a softer quality. They had absolutely nothing in common. Grandpa loved sports and action movies. Grandma loved gardening and classical music. They argued about everything from politics to what to have for dinner. By every logical measure, they were completely incompatible. Then why stay together? Thurn asked. Because every morning for 64 years my grandpa made my grandma coffee exactly how she liked it. And every night my grandma would read to my grandpa from whatever book she was enjoying, even though he usually fell asleep halfway through. They chose each other every single day, not because it was logical, but because they loved each other. That's what love does. It makes you choose someone even when logic says you shouldn't. I found myself accessing the file on Jake's grandparents. They had indeed been married for 64 years. They'd passed away within 6 months of each other, which human medical professionals attributed to what they called broken heart syndrome. Your grandfather died of emotional trauma after losing his partner, I observed. He died because he loved her so much that living without her didn't make sense anymore, Jake corrected. Is that logical? No. Is that love? Absolutely. The council sat in heavy silence, processing information that challenged their fundamental understanding of how intelligent species should function. You are arguing that humanity's greatest weakness is actually its greatest strength, Counselor Thurn summarized. I'm arguing that they're the same thing, Jake said. Love makes us vulnerable, it makes us do stupid things. But it also makes us brave and loyal and willing to fight for something beyond ourselves. You want to know why humans should be part of the galactic community? Because we'll love you too. Unconditionally, illogically, and probably in ways that will drive you absolutely insane. But we'll be there when you need us, no questions asked. No contracts required. That is a significant claim, Mara said carefully. It's a human promise, Jake replied. We're really good at keeping those, especially when they're made out of love. Counselor Thurn was about to respond when an alert signal flashed across every display in the council chamber. Emergency priority communication. The kind that meant something had gone catastrophically wrong somewhere in the galaxy. I opened the message with 2 hands while bracing myself with the other 2. It was from my home planet, and it was bad. The Thorian homeworld is under attack, I said, my voice somehow steady despite my rising panic. A rogue asteroid cluster has entered the system. Impact in 72 hours. Casualties estimated at 4.3 billion. The council erupted into activity. Displays lit up with trajectory calculations and resource assessments. Species began calculating whether they had ships in range, whether intervention was strategically advantageous, whether the political implications justified immediate action. I stood there, frozen, watching my entire world's potential destruction play out in holographic projections. 4 arms suddenly felt inadequate for the weight of what I was seeing. How many ships does Thoria have for evacuation? Counselor Thurn asked, his tone clinical. Not enough, I managed. The civilian fleet can evacuate maybe 30% of the population. The rest will need external assistance, and even then, the logistics of coordinating that many vessels in 72 hours. The calculations don't work, there's not enough time. The council continued their analysis. Discussing response times, debating whether intervention fell within various treaty obligations, calculating the cost-benefit ratio of mounting a rescue operation. Nobody was actually helping yet. They were thinking about helping, which was apparently different. We need ships, I said, louder than intended. We need evacuation vessels, cargo haulers, anything that can carry people off-world. We need them now. The Vraxian Dominion has a fleet in a nearby sector, the Vraxian representative said carefully. However, deploying them would leave our trade routes vulnerable. We would need security guarantees before committing resources. The Sentient Collective could provide computational support for coordination, Mora offered. But we would need to review the diplomatic implications of intervening in a non-member system. Thoria has been part of this council for 3 centuries, I said. My voice edged with something that might have been desperation or anger or both. We are members. Of the council, yes, Thurn clarified. But the attack is on your civilian population, which falls under different jurisdiction. We need to determine proper protocol. They were debating protocol while my entire family, everyone I had ever known, everyone on my homeworld waited for death or salvation. This was the logical approach. Calculate risks, minimize exposure, follow proper procedures. This was civilization without love. Earth will help. Everyone turned to look at Jake, who had spoken so quietly I almost missed it. I'm sorry? Counselor Thurn said. Earth will help, Jake repeated, louder this time. He was already typing on his communication device with the frantic energy of someone who had made a decision and would not be talked out of it. I'm contacting Earth Defense Command now. We'll send every ship we have. Ambassador Murison, Thurn said carefully, humanity is not obligated to assist in this situation. You are a probationary member of the Council. This conflict does not concern Earth. It concerns Vex, Jake said simply. Still typing. And Vex has been nothing but patient with us for 3 months while we proved that humans are complete disasters. So yeah, we're helping. No debate, no protocol, no calculating whether it's strategically advantageous. Your fleet is not large enough to make a significant difference, Mora pointed out logically. Then we'll make an insignificant difference, Jake snapped. We'll save whoever we can, and that'll be better than standing here having a committee meeting about jurisdiction. I stared at him. You cannot commit your entire fleet without authorization from your government. Watch me. Jake continued typing. I'm sending a priority alert to Earth right now. Commander Vex needs help. That's all the authorization I need. That is not how interstellar politics work, Counselor Thurn said. Maybe not for you, Jake replied, still focused on his device. But humans? We hear that someone needs help, and we show up. That's what we do. My communication device started vibrating, not just mine. Every human representative in the council chamber was suddenly receiving the same message. I watched as they read it, watched as their expressions changed from confusion to determination. What is happening? Mora asked. Jake just sent a distress call to every human ship, station, and colony in this sector. One of the human aides explained, reading her device. He used the emergency beacon protocol. That protocol is reserved for human emergencies only, Thurn protested. Vex is our friend, Jake said, looking up from his device to meet my eyes. That makes this a human emergency. Within minutes, responses started flooding in. Cargo haulers changing course. Colony transports volunteering for evacuation duty. Even private civilian ships offering whatever help they could provide. We have 47 ships confirming they can reach Thoria within 60 hours, the aide reported, her voice thick with emotion. More are still responding. They're coming from everywhere. I could not speak. My translator was making concerned noises about my elevated stress levels, but I could not form words in any language. This is illogical, Counselor Mora said, but her tone had shifted. These humans have never met Commander Vex. They have no connection to Thoria. They gain nothing from this intervention. They gain the knowledge that they helped, Jake said. That when someone needed them, they showed up. That's worth more than any strategic advantage. The Vraxian fleet is still closer, the Vraxian representative pointed out. We could arrive faster if we committed our ships. Then commit them, Jake challenged. Vex needs all the help we can give. This isn't a competition. This is a rescue. There was a long pause. Then the Vraxian representative began typing on their own device. The Dominion will deploy our evacuation fleet, they announced. No security guarantees required. The Sentient Collective will provide coordination algorithms, Mora added quickly. And we will redirect 3 of our transport vessels to assist. One by one, council members began committing resources. Ships, supplies, personnel. The logical species were suddenly making decisions that provided no immediate benefit to their own civilizations. They were acting out of something that looked suspiciously like compassion. Counselor Thurn's crystalline form shimmered with what I now recognized as deep emotion. The Krellian Empire will provide military escort for all evacuation vessels. Any ship assisting Thoria will travel under our protection. I finally found my voice. Why? Why are you all helping now? Because the humans showed us that we should, Thurn said simply. He did not calculate odds or debate jurisdiction. He simply saw someone in need and acted. That is, apparently, what love looks like. And we are not so logical that we cannot recognize its value. Jake was crying. Not dramatically, just quiet tears running down his face while he coordinated ship movements on his device. Humanity learned a long time ago that we're stronger together. Looks like the galaxy is learning that too. The next 72 hours were a blur of coordinated chaos. Human ships arrived first, diving into Thoria's atmosphere with the kind of reckless bravery that made every safety protocol scream in protest. They loaded civilians until their cargo holds exceeded maximum capacity, then loaded more. The Vraxian fleet arrived next, their massive transports efficiently processing thousands of evacuees per hour. The Sentient Collective managed the logistics with computational precision that turned potential disaster into organized evacuation. The Krellian military held formation around the planet, protecting the rescue operation. Species that had spent thousands of years operating on pure logic were suddenly making decisions based on something else entirely. They were acting out of care for beings they had never met, from a world they had no obligation to protect. They were acting, in other words, like humans. When the asteroids finally impacted Thoria, 97% of the population had been evacuated. The remaining 3% had chosen to stay, mostly elderly Thorians who wanted to die on their homeworld. We mourn them, but we celebrated the billions who survived because an entire galaxy decided that love was more important than logic. 3 weeks later, the Galactic Council reconvened to vote on humanity's continued membership. The Council has reviewed humanity's integration period, Councillor Thurn announced. We have concluded that humans are, objectively speaking, completely insane. Jake started to stand, preparing for bad news. However, Thurn continued, we have also concluded that the galaxy needs more insanity. Humanity's application for full Council membership is approved unanimously. The chamber erupted in what I can only describe as alien cheering. Jake looked stunned. Really? He asked. Even after everything? The weddings, the pet smuggling, the unauthorized rescue missions? Especially because of those things, Councillor Morris said, and I could swear I detected warmth in her collective voice. You showed us that logic alone is insufficient. That sometimes the illogical choice is the correct one. That love, as chaotic and inefficient as it is, has value we failed to recognize. The sentient collective has begun studying human emotional responses, Mora continued. We believe we may have been missing a critical component of existence. We are, in your terms, learning to feel. The Vraxian Dominion is revising its mating protocols to include compatibility of personality and shared interests, the Vraxian representative added, sounding almost embarrassed. Early results suggest increased relationship satisfaction, and I have adopted an Earth animal, I announced, which caused Jake to nearly spit out his coffee. You what? I held up my personal device, showing an image of a small dog with floppy ears and an expression of absolute joy. His name is Winston Jr. He is named after Ambassador Morrison's dog. He is completely useless, destroys my furniture, and requires constant attention. And? Jake prompted, grinning. And I love him more than is logical or reasonable, I admitted. He makes me happy. That appears to be sufficient justification for the inconvenience. However, I have also noticed that when my world needed help, humans did not hesitate. They acted from love, not logic. And that love saved billions of lives. That's what love does, Jake said softly. It saves people. Sometimes in grand dramatic ways, and sometimes just by showing up when it matters. Councillor Thurn addressed the full council. The galaxy is better for having them among us, even if they do keep smuggling pets onto space stations, Mora added, with what I swear was humor. Especially because of that, Thurn agreed. As the council session ended and representatives began filing out, Jake approached me with that characteristic human smile that I had initially found confusing, but now recognized as genuine warmth. So, Winston Jr., huh? He said. Got any pictures? I pulled up my entire photo album, which already contained 147 images, despite having owned the dog for only 9 days. He is very photogenic, I explained defensively, and extremely good at what humans call puppy dog eyes. I find myself unable to deny him anything. Yeah, that sounds about right, Jake laughed. Welcome to the club, Vex. You're officially one of us now. A human? I asked. Someone who loves something more than logic says you should, Jake clarified. Which is basically the same thing. I looked at the image of Winston Jr., then at Jake, then at the council chamber where species from across the galaxy were learning that sometimes the heart knows things the brain cannot calculate. I suppose there are worse fates, I admitted. Wait until you discover that humans celebrate their pets' birthdays with parties and special food. That is ridiculous, I said. Winston Jr.'s birthday is in 6 weeks, Jake continued. You should come, bring Winston Jr. We'll make it a thing. I found myself agreeing before my logical brain could intervene, which I suppose proved his point about love overriding common sense. As I left the council chamber that day, I realized something profound. The galaxy had spent millennia building civilizations on logic, efficiency, and strategic advantage. We had created wonders of technology and philosophy. We had explored the universe and unlocked its secrets. But we had forgotten how to care. Humanity, with all its chaos and illogic and catastrophic decision-making, reminded us that some things matter more than efficiency. That sometimes you steal a spaceship to rescue someone who doesn't need rescuing. That sometimes you postpone surgery to attend a wedding. That sometimes you adopt a small creature that contributes nothing practical to your life except joy. That sometimes love is the only logic that matters. And if learning that lesson meant dealing with humans and their wedding disasters, their unauthorized rescue missions, and their absolute refusal to follow any rule that conflicted with their feelings, well, the galaxy would just have to adjust. After all, we had 47 smuggled pets on the Mars colony and counting, and apparently that number was only going to increase now that other species were getting interested in this whole emotional attachment thing. The universe was about to get a lot more illogical, and honestly, after 3 months of studying humanity, I had learned that illogical was just another word for alive. My personal device buzzed with a message from Jake. Winston Jr. playdate next week? Our dogs need to be friends, I typed back. That is unnecessary and provides no tactical advantage. Then I added, what day works best for you? Because that apparently was what love looked like, and the galaxy was finally learning to recognize it.